SOMNIPHOBIA.
Throughout the history of unexplained death, a rare few cases turn not on who a person was, but on the stranger fact that no one could say who they were at all. This week, we turn to a man found dead on a beach near Adelaide in the summer of 1948, a case that would come to be known simply as the Somerton Man. Every label had been cut away, and sewn into a hidden fob pocket of his trousers was a rolled scrap of paper bearing two Persian words, Tamám Shud, it is ended. Just after dawn on the 1st of December, 3 walkers crossed the sand at Somerton Park and saw a well-dressed man against the low seawall and took him, at first, for a sleeper. The story we follow this week begins not with a name, but with its absence, and with a body that a whole nation would examine and still fail to claim. It seemed ordinary. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered and powerfully built, somewhere between 40 and 45 years old, and in the physical condition of a trained athlete. He wore a fashionable double-breasted jacket of apparent American tailoring, polished leather shoes, and a tie striped in red, white, and blue. But he wore no hat. One detail puzzled the pathologist. The calf muscles of his legs were unusually high and pronounced, the legs of a man who had lived on his toes. A half-smoked cigarette rested against his collar, as though fallen from his lips. In his pockets, the police found the ordinary debris of a journey: an unused rail ticket to Henley Beach, a bus ticket, an American-made aluminum comb, a half-empty packet of chewing gum. There was also a cigarette packet of one brand, holding 7 cigarettes of a different brand entirely, and a box of matches. Of his name, nothing. What unsettled the investigators most was the plainest thing of all. Here was a man dressed with care who carried nothing to say who he was. Then they looked at the clothing itself and found every maker's label and tailor's tag carefully cut away. Someone had made him unknowable. The post-mortem only deepened the mystery. Death had come at around 2 a.m, some hours after the man had eaten his last meal, a simple pasty. Inside, it was stranger still. The man's spleen was roughly 3 times its normal size, and his heart, liver, kidneys, and stomach were all severely congested, with blood pooled in the stomach itself. Every sign pointed toward poison. And yet, when the samples were tested, the toxicology found nothing whatever. No drug, no poison, no chemical that the laboratories of the day were able to name. Dwyer told the inquest that he was, in his own words, quite convinced the death could not have been natural. At the inquest, a professor of pharmacology suggested a rare poison such as digitalis or strophanthin, substances that break down in the body and leave no trace. It could never be proved. There, the coroner stopped. He was prepared to find, he wrote, that the man had died from a poison that had not been accidentally administered. But whether the poison was taken by the dead man's own hand or given to him by another's, he could not say. 6 weeks after the body was found, the police traced a brown suitcase that had been checked into the cloakroom of Adelaide railway station the day before the man died. Every label, once again, gone. Inside were a dressing gown and red felt slippers, an electrician's screwdriver, a table knife filed down into a sharp blade, and a stenciling brush of the kind carried by officers aboard merchant ships. There was also a reel of orange waxed thread of a type not sold anywhere in Australia that exactly matched a repair in the dead man's trousers. These were not an ordinary traveler's belongings. They were specialized, deliberate, and strangely hard to place. Nothing about them was accidental. And then, on 3 of the items, a single name had survived the erasure. T. Keane on a tie, Keane on a laundry bag, Keane on a singlet. 3 marks left behind. Everything else about the man had been unpicked, unstitched, and cut away, thread by thread, until almost nothing remained by which to hold him. Someone had wanted this man erased. They had very nearly succeeded. Then came the strangest clue. Sewn into a tiny fob pocket of his trousers was a tightly rolled scrap of paper, printed with 2 words in Persian, Tamám Shud, meaning ended or finished. Microscopic tests showed the scrap had been torn from the last page of a specific book, a 1941 edition of Edward Fitzgerald's translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Weeks later, a man walked into a police station carrying that very copy, which he had found lying on the seat of an unlocked car parked on a street in Glenelg. Pressed faintly into the inside back cover of that book, in pencil, were 5 lines of handwritten capital letters that read unmistakably like a code. No one has ever cracked it. Decades afterward, in 1978, cryptographers at the Australian Department of Defence examined the same 5 lines and admitted defeat. The code, they concluded, might never have carried any meaning at all. A dead man with no name, carrying the last word of a poem, and a message that no one alive could read. This was no longer only a question of who he was. It had become a puzzle without a key. One more mark remained. On the inside cover, penciled faintly, was a telephone number, which in July 1949, the police traced to a nurse who lived barely 400 meters from the body. Her name was Jessica Thompson, and when the police asked about the dead man on the beach, she said she did not know him. It was a simple answer. But when the police showed her a plaster cast of the dead man's face, a technician who was watching her described something other than indifference. She looked away from the cast, seemed on the point of fainting, and would not turn back to look at it again. Then she asked that her name be kept out of the record. Adelaide, in 1948, lay in the shadow of the Cold War and a secret weapons range. To some, the answer seemed obvious: a foreign agent, poisoned by a hand that left no trace. Thompson had once given the very same Rubaiyat to an army officer named Alf Boxall, whose own copy turned up whole and intact. None of it was ever proved. Thompson died without ever explaining herself. Years later, her daughter would say that her mother had admitted she knew who the man was, but that it was, in her words, a matter for powers much higher than the local police. For 70 years, the man lay in an Adelaide cemetery beneath a plain headstone that read only, "The Unknown Man." Then, in May 2021, in steady rain, they exhumed his body at last. Working from strands of hair embedded in the original plaster death mask, a University of Adelaide professor, Derek Abbott, and an American genealogist built a family tree of 4,000 people. It closed on a single name. In July 2022, they announced it. The man on the beach had been Carl Webb, an engineer and instrument maker born in Melbourne in 1905. The quiet was only a surface. Most of the poems Webb had written were about death, which in one of them he called his greatest desire. In his final years, he had lost 4 close relatives, and his wife, Dorothy, had fled what was described as his moods and his violence. The name on the clothing made sense at last. Webb's sister had married a man named Thomas Keane. In 1946, Webb had tried to end his life with ether, and Professor Abbott believes that this time, with poison, he had at last succeeded. We have, at last, a name. What the man on the Somerton beach still does not have is a reason, a proven cause, or any certainty about the hand that ended him. Those, like the words sewn into his pocket, remain what they always were: ended and finished and unexplained. That's where the record ends, for now. Subscribe.